Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alana and today you'll be joining me as I gush about my top 5 favourite sci-fi novels. And by top 5 I mean 5 plus 1 honorary mention, which I've slipped in there because it's not like quite sci-fi, but it has sci-fi type elements in it. Now I will also just state that this is as filming in 2021, so as I'm continually reading new material, this list could change in the future, but as of right now, this is where it's at. These are also a mixture of young adult, new adult, and adult sci-fi. And yes, the things that I'm putting on this list you will probably have already heard of because some of them are quite popular, but you wouldn't have heard of why I love them. So let's jump into it. So I'm going to start off with the YA selections and then work up to the adult selections, and we're going to kick this off with The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. This is book 1 in the Chaos Walking trilogy, and if you have not yet picked this up, I implore you to please do, because it is amazing. I have reread this book multiple times since first reading it back in high school, and I think I've consumed the series at least 3 or 4 times over now, because every time I go back into it, I just love it as much as the first time. So if you have never heard of The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, which did just get turned into a movie, but the movie didn't 100% do it justice, even though they had a pretty good cast. If you have not seen that or heard of this, this is set on the New World, and we follow Todd, who is a young boy growing up in a male-only society. Now on this new world, all of your thoughts are projected outwards so you can hear everybody's thoughts. And this is really coolly shown like through this. So we have a page full of noise, as they call it, and essentially this is very overwhelming. There is no privacy. Todd, who is a young adult, is trying to grow up in this world, and then one day Todd stumbles across a patch of silence, and this has never happened to him before, and the world and the story kicks off from there. So the main reasons why I love this series are, number 1, the world building puts you right into this new world, and it feels so fleshed out and alive. Number 2, you have some amazing characters in this. Todd, as we first start reading from his point of view, starts out as illiterate, and we can tell this through the writing because it's not like grammatically correct. But as the story progresses and Todd becomes more literate, that then brings in another theme, which I can't tell you about. But speaking of themes, there are some incredible things discussed in this, like manhood and toxic masculinity and religious factions and friendship and family, and it's incredible. Next up, also in the teen sci-fi section, is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This is book 1 in the Arc of the Scythe series, trilogy. And essentially in this world we have a utopia. So humankind has overcome illness, they have overcome famine and disease and all of that, and can now live forever. But because you can live forever, there has to be this separate organization called the Scythedom or the Scythehood. Basically, there are a faction of people who have the power to permanently kill someone to control the population of the world. Now this group of people, these Scythes, are meant to be impartial and not corrupt, but being a utopia and being humanity, some of that is going to bleed through. So in this one we have a dual perspective narrative, so we follow Citra and Rowan, who are 2 young people who have been selected to become Scythes. So they are in training to take on this mantle, and it flips between their 2 point of views, and having those 2 narrators and their comparison throughout and their journeys was a great way to tell this story. So you have themes of corruption, of good versus evil, of the fact that utopias are not always utopias, and I just thoroughly enjoyed this one. The world also, after this book, gets opened up so much more in the following 2 novels, and I just loved it so much. Neil Shusterman is very good at his concepts and at exploring different thought-provoking realities that we may come across. That is what he does really well. He is scarily good at exploring concepts that could happen, but he does put a more thrilling twist on it and take it into weird and wonderful territory. So if you want to explore any of those elements, pick this one up. And then we come to the more kind of new adult title on this list, and that is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. In this one, we again find ourselves on a new planet out in space, and we have humans who have learned to adjust to always having an alien presence hovering above their planet and continually attacking them. So in this world, we have a very militaristic type government and way of thinking, as they always have to be constantly defending themselves from the threat above. Now in this one, we do follow our main character Spencer, who is the daughter of an acclaimed pilot, a hero who then got tainted as a traitor. But she doesn't want to believe this. So there are big themes of what that means to her as a character and how that makes other people perceive her, especially when she really wants to follow in his footsteps and become a pilot herself. This one is really good if you love a good battle sequence in space. We see the educational school type element, as well as we see this young group of pilots training to be pilots, and there are just some really good discussions in this one as well. Spencer's growth as a character in this as well is one of my favorite things, because when I first started this novel, she was not for me. She was very over the top and would often say to her enemies, "I will bathe in your blood," and things like that. So she was a very immature type character who had a lot of weight on her shoulders. And just watching her growth throughout this novel was one of my favorite elements of it. So when you first start, if you're finding her a little bit stabby and immature, stick with her, because that is one of the best elements of this. Where this trilogy goes as well, at least I think it's a trilogy, I think the third one's just about to be released. The second book in this elevates the world and the story so much more as well. So you have this installment, which is great, and then you step up again, and then I'm guessing we're going to step up further with the third book. So it's got a lot going on for it. It really does. Book number 4 has us moving more into the adult sci-fi genre, and that is The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. Now this, I feel like I don't see a whole bunch on Instagram or YouTube as I do with the first 3 that I've mentioned, which is why I definitely wanted to include that here. Essentially, in this one, we have a post-apocalyptic type setting. So Earth is our setting, but there has been a big global event and we find ourselves in the aftermath of that. This was definitely a cover buy when I first bought it, because I saw this spine and it intrigued me, and then I read the synopsis that just says, "Every morning Melanie waits in her cell to be collected for class. When they come for her, Sergeant Parks keeps his gun pointed at her while 2 of his people strap her into the wheelchair. She thinks they don't like her. She jokes that she won't bite, but they don't laugh." That hooked me. I also feel like the less you know going into this book, the better off the impact of certain revelations are. So that's all I'm going to give you. The fact that it's post-apocalyptic, that spooky verb, and the fact that we have different people that we're following throughout this. So I think we have Melanie, we have Sergeant Parks, and we also have a scientist or someone as well. And essentially humanity is under attack. And those differing point of views really melded this into a great story. This is also very thrilling. And I flew through this when I read it many years ago now, so I am due for a reread, but it's a ride. There is also a prequel to this called The Boy on the Bridge, which I have also read and I also enjoyed, but OG original, loved this for what it was doing. And officially, the 5th and final one on this list is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. You've probably seen this everywhere. If you have not already, this is set on Mars in the future, with a caste type society with old ancient history Roman influences and giant battles. And basically space opera. So all that melded into the one, along with this author's look into philosophy and the human psyche, and with a lot of action, makes this incredible. This is definitely adult. It does get very, very violent, so just be aware of that going into it. And this first book kind of was pitched as Hunger Games-esque, but set on Mars, because you do have that deadly competition aspect in this first novel. And then book 2 and 3, again, open up the world and elevate this series even further. So in this one we follow Darrow, who is a Red, and essentially Reds have been told their entire existence that they are there to help colonize Mars, and they must stay underground and mine all the crucial minerals that are needed. At least that's what they've been told. And then one day Darrow finds out that this is all a lie after a very tragic thing happens earlier on in the book, and he decides to infiltrate the Golds, who are the top of the pecking order. Now, my main piece of advice when first diving into this world is to just roll with the lingo and the word mushes that this author does. So his world building technique is to just throw you straight in, and he'll use expressions like bloody damn and things like that. So roll with it, keep with it. If you're okay with some violence and an incredible revenge story, go for this one. And finally, we have my honorary mention, which is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Insanely popular, I know, but I also feel like this is a great place to start if you want to get into light sci-fi, because this is set in the real world, but it has some X-Men type elements in it. Again, we have a revenge story, and it lightly introduces you to things like powers and abilities, but in a slightly experimental type way, which comes into the slight sci-fi thing happening there. In this one, we follow Victor, who has just broken out of prison and is on a revenge type path towards his once friend, now enemy, Eli. This one does something entirely unique, and that is that it's told out of order. So you have flashbacks from 10 years ago, and then you have things happening. So I really love that unique storytelling element to this, and I think that the author just pulled that off really, really well. It has one of my most loved things in books, and that is powers and abilities. It has an origin type story, and then a revenge plot, which are another couple of things that I love in stories. And this was just a very thrilling ride. We follow a few different perspectives in this one as well, so again, multiple point of view. And yeah, I just think that this is a really good place to start if you want to ease yourself into sci-fi, because it does have a couple of little elements, but it's not traditionally sci-fi. It's kind of like urban fantasy fiction, sci-fi. It is its own thing. So that's it. Those were my top 5+1 favorite sci-fi books. I hope that you enjoyed this list as much as I did enjoy reading them. I feel like this is a really good mix of a whole bunch of different things as well, because each of these books are doing something entirely unique to themselves, and now I just feel like going back and rereading them, which I don't have time for, but I'm seriously considering. So that's going to be it for this video. Comment down below if I did mention one of your favorite sci-fi novels. You will also find linked down below my social media, and consider joining the channel and subscribing if you did like what you saw here. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you're doing okay out there, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!